Hello and welcome. My name is Kimberly Grymes, and I am a self published author. And this is From Ideas to Pages to Publishing, a podcast where I focus on quick, informative episodes for both readers and writers. Mainly, it's me giving an update on my writing projects, followed by one or two recent author experiences, all under 20 minutes or less. But today's episode isn't about my writing updates or a recent author experience to share. Welcome to episode 24, and today I'll be talking with Norse fantasy author Gregory Amato. Gregory is here talking with me today about his Norse fantasy book series and his experience with launching multiple successful Kickstarter campaigns. If you are considering running a Kickstarter campaign in the near future, or if you're just curious about the behind-the-scenes operations of running a Kickstarter, then this is a fantastic episode to listen to. Okay, let's go ahead and jump right into my chat with Norse fantasy author Gregory Amato. Hi, okay, I'm excited to be talking with Norse fantasy author Gregory Amato. Welcome to my little podcast. Why don't you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your books first?
Thanks, Kimberly. My name is Gregory Amato. I started publishing Norse fantasy in 2023. Previously, I was an FBI intelligence analyst, and I left that job to work on independent publishing full time. The first book was Burden to Bear in the Spear of the Gods Saga, and I've now released two of the novels out of the three. The third one is coming later this year. That is Fall into Fury. I ran a very successful Kickstarter campaign for that earlier in 2025. And Norse fantasy, I say because a lot of writers are writing like Norse-inspired fantasy, and they're big guys with big axes and big furry things on their shoulders. And the thing is that the Norse myths have for many decades been really personal to me, and I knew them really well. And when I was writing a fantasy world, what I wanted was the myths, magic, and monsters of the Viking Age come to life. I didn't really want Norse inspired and then some weird thing that was basically D&D. I really wanted as much of an experience putting you back into that time period in a fantasy setting with dwarves and swords that cut through rock and wizards and like all the stuff that's in the sagas. So that's why I often say Norse fantasy. And yeah, that's what I write right now.
I absolutely love that because I think you're right. I think when people hear Norse, they immediately think of that image of the TV and movie stereotypical Viking Thor image.
Yeah,
So to take it back to its originality, I think that's fantastic. And I really think that if people are looking for that, they should definitely check out your books.
I agree. There are so many cool things. Just to add a quick aside,
Yeah.
it's not that, hey, I'm such a much better expert. It's really more about like there's so much cool stuff in these sagas, and it doesn't often make it in there. I just reposted an image of Thor on Facebook that I thought was pretty good, and I thought it was pretty good because you get these images of Thor on the internet, and they're very common, and they're all over the place, and most of them get the red hair and the beard right, despite Marvel doing that well differently. But they don't often get a lot of the other cool things like the girdle of strength, the iron gauntlets, or get his clothes right to period age Viking period correct clothing. And when you do get that in art, I think it's really awesome because there are all these extra details that are missing from some of the popular media that when you give them to people, they're like, "Oh, that's awesome." And it's like, "Yeah, trust me, it is."
And that is exactly why people prefer books. Or I shouldn't say all people,
Fair.
but a lot of people prefer the books to the movie because you're getting so much more of the character development and the originality where they trim it for the movies and everything. But I think that's fantastic that you took it back and further and brought back more of the origin stuff. So fantastic. Gregory, do you have any upcoming project goals or new books or any kind of exciting news to share with everyone?
I think that the really exciting news is the completion of the series with book three, Fall into Fury. So Kickstarter backers will get that in November, and it will be wider release to retailers in December because Kickstarter backers always get it early. I'll touch on that a little bit later too. Once the series is complete, like that's the overall arc. That's the longest book. That's a big weight off my shoulders. That means nobody is worrying, will this fantasy author complete his series anymore? And then it's on to new adventures. And I have a few new adventures in mind, and I'm actually really excited to start doing a little bit more work on them. I've done some experimental stories, but nothing full draft yet. So where I go with that, and then what other outreach I do because I'm considering expanding into Substack later for other short form content. Just being able to focus on these new things is going to be really exciting for me, and I hope to kind of transmit that excitement to new readers.
Yes, and Substack is a great place to do that. And I think that's fantastic that you have had some Kickstarters, which we're going to touch base on. But it's also exciting to complete a series. So congratulations on that. So let's jump into the author experience. Each week, I share either an experience that has impacted my author career or something that has happened recently and that is worth sharing with everybody listening. So, with you being here with me, Gregory, it is your turn to share either a recent experience or something that's happened throughout your author journey to help you grow as an author.
I think running the three Kickstarters and launching my books that way, I've learned a lot, and that experience has helped. It has really informed me as far as interacting with readers, and also forwarding my business because you are a business as an independent author, and I had some good advice right at the beginning of doing that, and I also learned a lot. I'm not a big social media guy. If you want to do well on social media, you need to make a concerted effort to do that, and hopefully you don't hate it. I I am not great on social media, and I will kind of leave it at that. I do better on my newsletter, do very well on my newsletter actually, and direct sales, direct communications. Anytime when I'm engaging with readers in a more direct way, that's really been more my style. So I wanted to talk about the things that maybe the biggest picture things, maybe a few details about what I've learned running these Kickstarter campaigns. Not to say that anybody has to do exactly this because, there are many business strategies for us indies, but I think it's very likely these are going to apply to just about anyone. And overall, I think what you have to remember is you need to set yourself up for success with planning and having things ready to go well before they launch. But you also need to remember you're managing a backer experience when you're on Kickstarter, and that's a long time before you actually send them any books. The backer experience is as soon as they see you in a search engine or they see you in an update email, or they view your banner, or look at your campaign description. And that's going to go on because hopefully they back you. That would be great. And then what? Well, you've got to send updates, but people don't just want updates for the sake of it. Remember, they're backing you as an author rather than backing the project so much. And with that mindset involved, you've got to give them a reason to feel good about all of that. And that is including the delivering a great book eventually. So starting maybe chronologically, you want to set yourself up for success by having a good pre-launch duration. And I was told a rule of thumb is 60 days pre-launch minimum. And I think that's a really good rule of thumb. I'm not sure who would say that is too long. In fact, I might go to a minimum of 90 days pre-launch because your opening days on Kickstarter are so important. You want to hit that as hard right out of the gate as you can. The second thing I will get into a little bit of detail, and that is here is a suggestion: get your video done before pre-launch, which maybe people don't want to do because your video isn't even viewable at pre-launch. No one will see it. So, what will happen to people like me is they will get into pre-launch and they will be like, "Great, here, follow my campaign, get notified when it actually launches." And they will think, "Ah, big sigh. Now I have 3 months before I have to get really serious." And 2.5 months later, that's me, I will be scrambling to make a video, hate the video, but be forced to post that video because you really need to show people that you are a human being looking for their support, and you're just going to have to live with that. So, get that video done earlier is advice that I will be giving to my future self, and hopefully I follow it. During that pre-launch period, you've got a lot of time, but you need to use that time pretty wisely. It's not a time to just kick back. It's a good time to brainstorm stretch goals well in advance of hitting those. So, what levels of funding do you expect to hit after you hit your main funding level? And what kinds of things can you offer to people? What extras are you willing to offer? I've given out free ebooks. I have said, here's a stretch goal, and if you meet it, I will give you a free audiobook, or I will turn this existing story into an audiobook. That's how I started dipping my toe into audiobooks. Some stretch goals are going to cost very little in money, but a lot in time, or the vice versa. And some things are going, like an audiobook, even a short audiobook, will cost you a lot in both time and money, but could be a good way of, if you've hit it at an extra level of support that you didn't anticipate, this is a good way to get into that. I would shorten my campaigns, I think. I've been running them at about 2.5 weeks. I think most people just assume you run it for 30 days, and that's a mistake. Kickstarter actually tells you that's too long. But how short to go? Well, I would go probably 2.5 weeks next time. I'm seeing a lot of good success, or a week and a half even, depending. So we'll see how that plays out with some other fantasy campaigns over the next, oh, I don't know, next year or so. And I like to pay attention to other, epic fantasy authors who are doing well as close to the work that I'm doing so that I can get comps. And how long are their durations? So Michael J. Sullivan is a good one. He's not similar in scale because he's so much bigger than I am, but at the same time, we're both writing epic fantasy. We both have a bit of sense of humor in the prose, which is not always true in an epic fantasy. A lot of the readers, I think, are crossing over with those kinds of similar styles. So I think he's a good one to track. And you're never going to find anybody who's exactly like you anyway. So when we get into the campaign itself, I found that it's really important to sell your personal story as part of it, not as much of it as the book, but that you're selling. But remember, people are backing you. They're supporting you. They want to feel good about that. They're giving you some extra money for you to get your project done. And hopefully you're giving them extra reason to feel good about that. And then maybe some extra stuff. Then you've got to understand, what do people want on Kickstarter? And that's really important. I started out my first one and I thought, all right, well, I want to make it as accessible for everybody because they won't want to spend a lot of money. So I only offered paperback and ebook. And I immediately got asked for hardbacks. And it was too late to add them. People on Kickstarter who support indie authors really primarily want print books, and they usually want them signed with some personalization. Again, that's that author connection there. So understand what does well and what does not. That doesn't mean you can't run I want to turn this book into an audiobook only campaign, but this book will not fund at nearly the level for just an audiobook as it would for signed print copies, including hardcovers. You're again managing the backer experience just by deciding how many reward tiers you give people. Do you want to sort through a ton of reward tiers just to try to figure out what you're getting, value for the money? I don't think so. I don't. So offer fewer reward tiers, keep it simple. You don't need to give all kinds of vague stuff, but if you're offering something like, and you'll get a free story, and you'll get this extra prequel that I wrote, those are good to have though. And to add on to that, I like to keep a free story in my pocket as a potential stretch goal. This is helpful in a couple of ways. For one thing, it adds value to what the backers are paying for. It's going to be exclusive, either going to be exclusive to them or first to them or free with their reward tier. And it does double duty because not only does it add value, but we end the Kickstarter campaigns, and then what you can say that you're going to fulfill that month. You could say you're going to fulfill in 6 months. You could say you're going to fulfill next year. Just be honest about it. But whatever it is, there's going to be a delay, and that delay can get bigger because you got sick, or your editor got sick, or the print copies came not quite in the quality range that was acceptable. A lot of things are not under your control. So let's say you promise in 3 months and it turns into six. Well, if you have that free story going to them, you already start fulfilling earlier. And again, that makes the backer experience more positive. It gives them something to read in the meantime. This is how you want to be treating the people who are your biggest supporters. And then you want to plan out a few backer updates for post campaign, not just figure those out after the fact. So a lot of those can be strategized with your stretch goals. For example, if your stretch goals were maps or illustrations, show the illustrations when they come in, show the maps when they're finished, show whatever you've got. People are much more easily take in the visual media than say an update like, all right, I sent the text to the editor. Okay, so a lot of people will find that pretty important. But is that really exciting? I don't think so. So maybe you add like a little meme to it to make like a Donkey Kong meme. Maybe I've done that before. Uh, so fine, do that too, but it's not as satisfying as like, here's the interior art now. That's another bit of reinforcement that things are getting done, that backers are getting a quality product, that things are coming together as planned. And so once you do that, then you finally send them the book. They've still got a positive impression of you, like that you're going in and they're really excited about getting this book, not saying, "Oh, finally." So if you do that, manage the backer experience, under promise, over deliver, and then you've set yourself up for success when you give them that great book, and it does have to be great, then you've got more of an experience that's direct with that reader. And they're more likely to sign up for your newsletter and be excited about your newsletter and have an ongoing relationship where they give you support over time rather than just support that is for this particular project. This is a very different strategy than trying to reach out to, say, Kindle Unlimited readers who they're not paying you anything. They're paying Amazon and they just want as much content as possible. So, you can, I'm not saying don't go that route, but I am saying this is a very different kind of strategy. And you might be able to use a little bit of one and a little bit of the other, but mine is a little bit slower, more direct, more engaging, more content focused. The other is speedier, and has a lot of advertising to do with it. I've never advertised for any of my Kickstarter campaigns, but I've done pretty well second and third. First one was expectedly small, but second and third, I just built and built and built. And I think that goes to the idea that I was learning and doing more and more things right.
I agree. I think a lot the if people go into Kickstarter, I feel like they need to know you can't just do one. It's all about building on the previous campaign that they have done. So I can see how with each one, and I've seen authors, they have grown with the more campaigns that they have put energy and stuff into. I have to say, I absolutely love that phrase, managing the backer experience. When you had said that and you had started talking about how that is key when you are doing a Kickstarter campaign, because it's a long-term commitment and you
Yeah.
need to be willing to put in the time and energy to keep these people engaged and excited. And when you said that, I was like, oh, that is perfect. That is exactly what Kickstarter is all about is their experience. And then you compare to outside retail, KU as being an example, how it's a totally different experience. So I think you had some fantastic tips and guidance and things for people to, take in and consider if they decide they want to do a Kickstarter campaign. There's a lot more that goes into doing a Kickstarter campaign. I think people don't fully understand that. And like you said, when you started with your first one, it was like my first one was also very small. But as you grow and you learn and you get into the community and you see what other people are doing, and then you adjust, like you said, you'll adjust your campaign time. 2.5 weeks is definitely the sweet spot and doing, depending on, I've seen so many campaigns where there's so much content. And like you said, you get lost in which tier you're trying to pick out. So trying to make it as simple as possible for the backer to see exactly what they're there for definitely helps too. So
Yeah.
everything you said is amazing. And I think it hit right on the key things that people need to consider.
Yeah, thank you. I think it is, as you said, it's important to note. It's a lot of work to run a Kickstarter. It's a lot of pre-work. It's a very intense process while the campaign is running, and then it's a bunch of work post-campaign. The question is that the work you all want to do? That's what writers have to really ask themselves, because social media is work too. I just don't want to do that work. When I'm doing my Kickstarter stuff, though, I'm working within a community that's already geared towards supporting me. And then post campaign, I'm just communicating with people who are excited about my book, and that makes me want to put more of that time and effort in. That really is reinforcing to me. And so that's part of why I choose to put the time and effort in that way. Also, I keep a much higher percentage than Amazon or any of those online retailers will give me.
Yes, that's something else I kind of emphasize to people too is you're buying direct from the author and you're cutting out
Mm.
that middleman. And so you're giving more back to the creator. Not that there's nothing, bad with, the indie bookshops and everything, but at the same time, Kickstarter, you're really connecting with the author. You're getting more for your money and you're getting that special signed book, lots of, specific book series, swag and all that stuff. So I think it's definitely a different route to connect with your readers. And I'm interested to see, because myself, I've just kind of started the Kickstarter route, how I can kind of shift away from the social media because it is draining, constantly having to post to social media. So I am kind of absorbing your information too, as well, Gregory.
I did meet an author at Worldcon who similarly hated social media, but was on TikTok. And I said, so first of all, you're succeeding with mostly your newsletter and Kickstarter and live sales like me. How big is your newsletter? Well, it's considerably bigger than mine. It's not sustainable unless you have a big following. The other thing is she hates social media, but she's got enough success to pay someone to create those TikTok ads for her. And she knows that TikTok is where much of her market is. So it just pencils it out. The return on investment is big enough to pay for someone to do that. And if the return on investment works, you pay for it.
Yeah. you have to go where your audience is. And even if it's not something that you don't, enjoy doing, or you feel like you get burnt out easily from doing it so much, if that's where your audience is, that's where you got to go. So, yeah, I'm so excited for everyone to hear this take on Kickstarter from the behind the scenes from you, Gregory. So I appreciate you sharing that experience. All right, so if you're okay, we're going to do a really quick, fun speed round for everyone to just kind of get to know you a little bit better.
Okay, do I have to make
Let
my answers really fast?
Well, I mean, you can think about them, but
I
yeah,
can.
let's
All
do
right.
speed rounds. So, what the first thing that comes to your mind? So, coffee or tea?
Tea.
Ooh, do you have a special kind of tea?
I like black tea, English breakfast, and then I often switch to green tea later in the day. But
Nice,
coffee
nice, nice,
just
nice.
coffee has too much caffeine. It makes me jittery in ways that do not help me focus.
That has been an answer for somebody else too, the jitters. So,
Mm.
do you prefer writing at home or writing in a public place like a coffee shop or library?
Writing at home, although sometimes getting outdoors is helpful, but mostly writing at home, yeah.
I need no distractions. I need quiet. Do you write in sequential order or out of order when you're writing your first draft?
Sequential. Are there people who write out of order? How do they keep things straight? All right, I don't, I maybe that's another whole session. I don't know how to even think about that.
Team sequential order, yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Do you prefer writing in the morning or evening?
Morning, yeah. By the afternoon, my brain is blasted with too many different tasks, taking it too many different directions. Focuses in the morning.
Yeah. Just like tell yourself, do it now, and then we can focus on everything else later.
Yeah.
On a scale from 1 to 10, one being completely cluttered and dust bunnies have moved in, and 10 being immaculately clean, how clean is your writing space?
Oh, I would say let's give it a 8.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. Three things you must have at signing events.
Must have at signing events. I need my sign that
Oh,
has the initial visual for people to see from afar. I need I'm not going to go with obvious things like books because duh. I need my notepad because I will chat with people. They will tell me interesting things or they will engage with me a little bit, and I will not remember that unless I write it down because, 3 dozen people later, it's really hard to remember names. And I need my newsletter sign up sheet because signings or live events are not just there to make sales. You are there to get people on the newsletter. And that is often sales made later or potential relationships later. You don't know.
yes, those are three excellent things. I have to say, I have to add on to your pad. When I'm signing people's names, I have to write down their name before I sign it because sometimes I might spell it wrong. And so I need it
Oh,
to
yeah.
visually see it.
Yeah, I keep sticky notes and I always do that.
Yeah. Yes, definitely bring your post-it notepads, people. Um, okay. Do you prefer reading a book or watching a movie?
Often it is reading a book that's better. And at the same time, I'm often too pooped to read. So I just want to sit down and watch something. And hopefully it's good.
Hopefully, yes. I feel that. I feel that 100% in regards to you've already drained your energy, so Netflix it is. Favorite snacking food while you're writing?
Oh, if I snack while I'm writing, then I'm not gonna write very well. But maybe snack in between when I get up. I'm just gonna go with beef jerky because it's the best snack food ever conceived. Period.
Period. That's it. Beef
Yeah.
jerky. My kids love beef jerky. Is there anything you wanted to add before we say goodbye in regards to one quick reminder for everybody to check out something?
I think the biggest thing for me is the newsletter, which you can sign up for at my website. But not everybody wants more emails. And I think that one of my goals in the coming months is to start a Substack account for longer form content than my newsletters and maybe for some audio retellings of Norse myths and sagas. Having never actually produced any content, I still have a bunch of followers on Substack anyway. But, so follow me and you will get updated or sign up for my newsletter. I will certainly tell you that I am starting the Substack, are probably two of the best ways to follow what's going on.
And we will have all those links in the show notes. And so you can definitely check out Gregory Amato's links and his website and his Substack. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was really exciting to chat with you, and I look forward to following your author journey on Kickstarter and outside of Kickstarter. For more information about Gregory Amato and his books, I will include all the links in the episode show notes. Thank you again for chatting with me today.
Kimberly, thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure.
It was great talking with Gregory Amato about his Norse fantasy series and what he's learned from running successful Kickstarter campaigns. I want to restate how important it is when running a Kickstarter campaign to focus on the backer experience. I absolutely loved how Gregory really emphasized the importance of this because your books, the swag, the stretch goals, everything needs to enhance the backer experience. And take it even farther with the backer updates. Communication is key with any Kickstarter campaign. I'll include links in the show notes to where you can find Gregory, his newsletter sign up, and his books. A little side note, Kickstarter is a fantastic way to support authors. It's just like buying direct from them without going through the middleman of a retail store. Plus, you get that backer experience. If you've never checked out all the beautiful books on Kickstarter, I highly recommend checking them out. Campaigns usually last a month or less, so there's always new books to browse. Thank you again to my guest, Norse fantasy author Gregory Amato, for joining me in today's episode. That's all for episode 24. I'll be back next week with more updates and more experiences to share. Until next time, thank you for listening to From Ideas to Pages to Publishing with me, Kimberly Grymes.